Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Big Game Indicating Dogs Q&A. These Q&As are from dog training questions from the Big Game Indicating Dogs Inner Circle for people that are following the Deer Dog Training Blueprint. If you're watching the video version of this, you can listen to the audio version of this Q&A, other Q&As, and other hunting and fishing and dog training podcasts on the Paul John Michaels podcast. It's available on all the good podcast apps, and you can check out the Deer Dog Training Blueprint at biggameindicatingdogs.com. You can check out loads of stuff on Big Game Indicating Dogs, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and you can check out some hunting and fishing adventure videos on Paul John Michaels YouTube. You can also follow me on Paul John Michaels on Instagram and Facebook for all sorts of bits and pieces that I'm up to. Let's get straight into it. This person's name is XYZZ. I think this is just a random profile that someone that is following the Deer Dog Training Blueprint. They obviously didn't have Facebook and they've just jumped on and whipped one up so they can get in and ask us questions. So this was actually a question that was sort of, I think they emailed it in and Vinny threw it up in the Q&A about the guy that had the dogs that was used on foxes and that. Yeah, and I think, he's obviously made up a profile, which is good. So it's the same question. There was a bit of chat about this in the Q&A post in the Inner Circle. But it's basically the same question, but he's given us a little bit of details. The big unknown thing last time when I spoke about this was, so this dog has been used he's struggling with range for big game indicating or deer indicating with a dog that has been used to flush and retrieve birds and foxes. And he said, and I'll shorten this right down, but he said he wasn't auto flushing. He was just sending, the dog was basically pointing or indicating, and he was sending the dog in, and that's it. So, and he's just struggling with range. Now, it doesn't sound like it's crazy difficult, but he's just struggling with range, which is quite a common issue, you know, even with a dog that hasn't done lots of retrieving and things, depending how bad it is. Even Print takes a bit of handling sometimes. Sometimes he goes back on a light long line, drags that around. So my answer on this is basically how I'm struggling with range on a dog is basically the thing, and the dog's being used to flush birds and foxes. You know, it's really all of that stuff out of part 7, 8, and 9 of the blueprint. Those later parts, there's all that stuff. It's the non-communicative stops and turns and all those things that we do there to slow a dog down and smooth everything out. I've spoken about this before. Sometimes when people are having issues, they might be on part 4 or 5 or 6 and they're getting a bit frustrated. And we've got a question later on about someone's, I think it's a 5-month-old dog, or it might be on part 5. One of the two, will get to it. Not doing perfect auto stops, you know, and quite often the answer to that is it's all right. You got to chill out and you've got to get to that part 7, 8, and 9 of the blueprint to get into that sort of later on phase of training, and that's what's refining all of that range and really teaching the dog to keep an eye on you, because it's a skill. It's a real skill that we're training a dog to do that. We're going through it now in the Deer Dog Boot Camp, where we're training range with Miko, and we've got some shot. We did a little bit of work with Print and Miko on the beach and basically show how Print's got that walk in front all set up, and that's brought about from all that training in the blueprint. And part 2, 3, 4, 5, while we're doing, there's all sorts of other stuff. There's the gun work and the scent work and the obstacles and all of that. But if we're talking about range, in part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's really setting up the foundation of it. Part 7, 8, and 9 is refining it and getting the dog really good at it. And that's those non-communicative stops and turns. That's when basically we stop without saying anything. We do a communicative stop, which is our stop command when we tell the dog to stop and it stops. We've got a communicative turn, which is a turn when we give the dog a turn command and we walk the other way. But the non-communicative training is really important for attentiveness and fine-tuning range. And all non-communicative training is for a non-communicative stop is we stop and the dog has to stop without us saying anything. And we do all that with the long line and several techniques that we use there. And the only reason they work is because we've laid all the foundation in the earlier parts of the blueprint. So the non-communicative stops and turns, the non-communicative stop is a real attentiveness thing of teaching the dog to look back at us. And that's just a stop where we stop walking and the dog has to stop too. And if the dog doesn't stop, we use the long line. We can stand on the long line. The non-communicative turns are more, and these are hugely important. When a dog that's been properly trained through the blueprint, and as we get to the end and we're really starting to get those non-communicative stops, non-communicative range, and we're really fine-tuning it, we do a lot of those non-communicative turns because we use change of direction as a hugely important tool for teaching range. You can keep walking in one direction straight ahead and stand on that long line. When the dog pulls too far away, you stand on the long line that it's dragging so it stops the dog walking and you can catch up a couple of steps. If it goes to take off again, you stand on it again and you can keep standing on it and catch up to the dog. If you keep walking forward, standing on the long line over and over again, you just get in that pattern of the dog trots ahead, you stand on it, it slows the dog down, you catch up, it'll trot out again. It's that change of, and if you do this instead, the dog's pulling away, without saying anything, you grab the long line and just hold the end of the long line and turn around and walk the other way. Like the dog's not even there, but you're holding the end of the long line. So the dog will either realize that you're walking the other way and turn around, or if it doesn't and it keeps walking away from you while you're walking in the opposite direction, it'll get to the end of the long line, feel the pull, turn around, and it turns around and you're just walking the other way. And it's like, holy shit. The boss has just turned around here and I didn't even know. You do that 3 or 4 times without saying anything. Just turn around and walk the other way. All of a sudden the dog starts keeping a pretty good eye on you because it's like, man, this guy might just turn around and walk the other way without saying anything. And if I don't realize, I'm going to get turned around with the long line anyway. And he's just not, it's what it's doing is it's making the dog's responsibility to watch you. That's what all that non-communicative stuff does. The non-communicative stops, the non-communicative turns the table around. If you're always doing it with commands, giving a stop command, giving a slow down command, every time you change direction, you're giving a turn command. That's you making it your responsibility to control the dog. And dogs pick up on that so quick. When you're always watching it and using your commands flat out the whole time, and every time the dog turns around, your eyes are locked on the dog, they just get on a mission of their own and they're just all over the place. All of that non-communicative training and a lot of the body language that we use, and all of that stuff's in part 7, 8, 9. That's really, and I'm doing a bit of a rant on this for other people listening, and people that don't have the blueprint and people that do, and it's just a important subject. Is that's all the fine-tuning stuff. And so for this person with the dog that they're struggling with range, for me, if it's real bad, I would have a look through those 3 parts, 7, 8, 9, just jump into the blueprint, have a scroll through the videos. They're all broken down into parts and all those parts have got titles, and keep an eye out for non-communicative stops, non-communicative turns, non-communicative training. Rewatch those parts. See if you can go do some work on those things out on the paddock and just get those on paddock, field, training area, whatever you've got. Make sure your dog's non-communicative stops and turns are good and get that attentiveness flowing quite well in a low distraction area instead of just always trying to do it while you're out hunting. If you're starting to run into serious problems while you're out hunting, it's good to tidy it up in a training area, you know. And here I just do all my training in town here in a park. Tidy it up, make sure the dog still knows how to do it, because it is a skill, and that's what all that stuff sets up. The other big thing there is having a look at that stuff right off the end of part 12, when I'm talking about handling the dog while hunting. As long as the dog knows how to do it, and we're not trying to use that stuff there, on the end of part 12, I'm talking about putting print back on the long line if I need to, putting a bit of pressure on him when he's pushing his range and getting too keen, and all of that stuff. We need to make sure that the dog does know how to do it, and that's what all that training does, and then we can basically back it up with that stuff off the end of part 12. Yeah, that's basically that. Julia, so this is a long question, but it's quite well written, so I left the whole thing there. It's quite an important topic too, and it comes up a bit, so this is just another opportunity to sort of talk about it and cover it off quite well, and there's some good interesting points that come up in this. So Julia, she says, sorry in advance for the essay. I usually don't like essays, but like I said, this is quite well written. We have a 6-month-old GSP pup who, up until about 4 months, was following the blueprint pretty perfectly. But it seems to be falling to bits recently. We haven't been able to proceed much because off of a command like a sit, recall, or a turn, he'll do what he's doing in the videos below. Biting at the long line, growling, jumping up, and biting at sweaters and shirts. His pupils dilate, his tail is mostly wagging, but the aggression seems to be increasing as time goes on. These instances usually last about 20 seconds to 1 minute tops, and then he continues on his merry way like nothing has ever happened. He usually gets distracted or gives up and keeps walking, and we praise once he starts walking nicely in front again. So that was one thing. I've read through this a few times and taken notes and thought about it. And that was one possible thing that stood out to me. So he's doing this, sounds like he's doing it quite a lot. Later on you talk about we try ignoring it because command of disapproval only seems to escalate it. So we've been ignoring it. We've been trying a few different things, but that's one thing you've been doing, is basically ignoring it when he's doing it, and then praising him once he's doing the same thing again, that's actually a bit of a school of thought in a lot of modern day dog training, is only positive reinforcement, ignoring the bad stuff and rewarding the good stuff and hoping it's all going to come together. The problem with that is it's like police officers driving around pulling over people that aren't speeding and giving them money, rewarding them for not speeding, and then expecting someone to not speed when they need to get somewhere in a hurry. It is just because you get rewarded when you go slow. It doesn't work like that. Imagine if there was no speed tickets or nothing. There'd be a lot of people speeding. So, and yeah, you talk about usually he gets distracted or gives up and keeps walking, and we praise him once he starts walking again. I'm not saying that this is 100% what you're doing and that this is what's happening, but that just jumped out at me. And this is what could be happening there, is that if you just ignore it until he stops, and then when he does stop and starts walking again, you praise him. If that praise is too close to him having that little flip out where he's jumping up and biting and doing all that stuff, well, one thing, there's nothing to discourage him from jumping up at you, and if it's fun for him, he'll probably just keep doing it, and it could get worse. And that sort of thing can also change the way your dog looks at you too, because if you're the type of person or the type of mate or master, or however you want to look at it for your dog, that he can just, whenever he wants, jump up and bite you and do all that stuff, and you just turn your back and ignore it, then that can be detrimental to the way your dog looks at you too, relationship-wise. He can start to look at you as a bit of a subordinate. But if he just gets to do that with no consequence, and then as soon as he starts walking properly again, you praise him, he could even be taking that praise as good dog for flipping out and then walking nicely again. And that could create that pattern of, I'll just flip out, and then I only get that big praise that type of praise when I start walking again after I flip out. So I'll flip out and start walking nicely again and get that big pat. So you got to be bloody careful, and everything always has to be contrasted. That disapproval I've talked about this before. When we put pressure on a dog for doing the incorrect thing, it's always done in a way where we're trying to switch it from doing the incorrect thing, pressure on that, get them doing the right thing, and then praise that. And it's that pressure that makes sure that the dog knows, I'm not meant to be doing this, and this is what I'm meant to be doing. So that jumped out at me. Make sure that praise that he gets once he starts walking again isn't somehow being linked back to that spaz out that he's having. So we tried everything, turning our backs to him and ignoring it while he jumps up from behind. One thing you definitely don't want to do is ignore it and stand still. If he starts flipping out and you turn your back on him and he starts jumping up and flipping out, and you're just standing still and he's just jumping up your back, you don't want to do that. And I'll get to what you do want to do instead. Because you say that we've tried turning our backs to him, ignoring it while he jumps up at us, because the command of disapproval only seems to escalate it. Really yanking on the long line only seems to escalate it and makes him start barking. And I know what you mean about that. The only thing that you haven't said here, you've talked about ignoring it, you've talked about turning your back, you've talked about pulling on the long line. The massive key here with this is that it should be if it's happening while you're moving, which it sounds like it is. You said it usually happens off a drill. So you do the drill, release him, and he starts jumping up and doing it. So you've really got to, if a dog was doing that with me, the one thing I don't want to do is stop. The one thing I don't want to do is stop. So if I release a dog off a stop drill, that means I'm beginning to walk. And if the moment the dog jumps up and I even hesitate or slow down or drop my eye contact down to the dog, that's me engaging with the situation, and that'll escalate it. So what I really need to do there, even let's say I released the dog off a stop command and it's come around in front of me and jumped up at me, I would just lean forward and speed up and barge straight through it and push it off me with the massive, get out of it, like that. And it would literally bounce off me and land like a meter away, and I would keep walking. And if it jumped at me again, it would get that again. Get out of it. And I just keep walking. And I've basically never had I've never had a problem with this. I would either push it off, or I would hold the long line. I'd have the long line a little bit shorter and closer up to the dog, and I'll push it away with that, so my hands aren't touching the dog, and I'm pushing it off with the long line, and I'll keep walking. And that movement and keep walking, and if it just kept jumping up at me, the moment I stop and turn and face the dog or slow down or look down, that's a big problem for me. I'd even if the dog was in behind me, and if the dog was in behind me trying to jump up, I'd have the long line and I'd just be pushing it off hard and going, get out of it, The minute you slow down, and it needs to be in that tone. If the dog's name's Max, if it's not, get out of it, and it's sort of, Max, no, Max, it's not the right tone. It really needs to be sharp and fast, and the dog needs to bounce off you, and you keep walking. And then if it's behind you or beside you, you need to wait for it to swing around in front. And if anything, in this situation, I would be pretty slow at getting back to praise after a dog had done something like that. It's more, I want a lot of space between that and getting the praise. I know I talk about timing, and as soon as the dog's doing the right thing, give it praise. But this is a different situation. Like that's a big deal for me. A dog trying to jump up and growl and bite, and if it's like a little pup having it, like Miko does it, but it's super playful, never in a growly, bitey way, and she jumps up at my hand. It's just a funny little habit thing that she's got. You've seen her do that, eh? Yeah, she's always been jumpy and real bouncy, jumpy dog. She knows she's not allowed to get her paws on me, and she'll often do it if I tell her to walk in front and I put my hand out. And when she's in behind, she'll sometimes swing around, bounce up at my hand, land, and trot off in front. It's just a classic Miko thing. But like pupils dilating, jumping up, biting my jersey, that's a major for me. Like that's exactly how I'm not going to yell again, but exactly how I yelled before. I said, get out of it. It's just disgust. And I'm just going to walk and completely ignore the dog for a while. Unless it jumps up or unless it tries to pull right out the side or lag behind. It's just, we're walking, you're following me, I'm running the situation, and you need to just calm the hell down and we can talk in a minute. And then maybe after 30 seconds or a minute of walking, I'd maybe try to do another stop command, super short, and to the point. Tell the dog to sit, the dog sits, give it a tiny bit of calm, pretty good dog. Wait, release it. If it thinks about jumping again, I do it again. If it sort of thinks about it, but it doesn't actually jump, I sort of But if you deal with this in that way, it won't keep doing it. So I've got some notes here. It can be a sign of overtraining. I haven't finished reading what you wrote. You've tried everything. You talk about the routine. Our routine from about 4 or 5 months old has been a 30-minute walk around a loop behind our house, once in the morning, once at midday, and once in the evening. It's the same route most days, so I wonder if he's getting bored. So maybe the outbursts are because he's frustrated. Maybe it's too long of a loop. Yeah, 30 minutes of the same loop 3 times a day is a lot. It's a lot, and if you're doing too many drills and it's not relaxed enough and the dog's not getting to do his own thing in that walk, I talk about longer walks are good, but you can't just hammer out the drills, and it can't be, Max, do this, Max, come on, go over here, Max, sit, good boy, and then keep going, and then, it's got to be more, come on, mate, let's go for a walk, and you're cruising together, and he stays in his range, and there's a few stops and pats, pretty relaxed, but it's got to be fun for the dog. It's got to be something that the dog wants to do again, and the drills that we do are just a part of it, and And I've talked about that, whether I do a 15-minute training session or an hour and 15 minutes, I'm still only doing 4 or 5 or 6 stop drills in that. If I'm working on my turns, I'm only doing 4 or 5 or 6 turns in that. So the longer the walk gets, the more spaced out my drills get. And how old was this dog again? 6 months old. It would be really good if you could get out into new areas, and that's a big one. And dogs do get frustrated and bored of the same area, and GSPs are quite can be quite confident and forward, and they want to do a lot fast. And it is amazing when sometimes the dog's getting bored and frustrated and turning back to you and wanting to jump up or wanting to go out to the sides and all of that. When you get them out into a new area, they just get their eyes forward and they're just exploring more. So that would be another thing, is maybe back off the sessions, back off the amount of drills that you do, and try to get into a new area and just do everything that you can to make it relaxed and fun, but don't put up with that shit either, and you've got to be hard on it. Another thing you've said here is, I'll take him to the beach every few days to run and play with other dogs, but he does the growly bitey thing there too, only with us and his long line, not with other dogs or people. We give him roughly 20 minutes of free time on top of that in our yard. So this is another thing that could be affecting it. So you say, I'll take him to the beach every few days to run and play with other dogs, but he does the bitey thing there too, but only with us and his long line. I'm a little bit unclear there whether taking him to the beach every few days to run and play with other dogs mean that you take him, you mentioned the long line there, but does he get let off the long line to run and play with other dogs at the beach? Because if he does, that can be a big problem too, and that's not on the blueprint. If you are doing that, I'm not saying you are, I'm a little bit unclear about that, but if you are letting him off the long line at the beach to run around with other dogs, that's that whole thing. It's all hammered out in the blueprint. We talked about a lot before that it's all about the way dogs prioritize activities. So if a dog gets too much fun and freedom from a young age, before they've got all this control and training down, for example, if I have a 6-month-old GSP pup and I do what's in the blueprint and it's kennelled quite a lot and most of its free time, quote unquote free time, is more just out with me working and training, then basically what I'm trying to say here is training with you needs to be the most fun that the dog has, particularly early on, and that way the dog is engaged with it and it wants to do it. If you give a young dog too much freedom, too much running around at the beach off the long line, just charging around with other dogs, and then another 20 minutes of free time in the backyard where it gets up to a little bit of mischief and digs a couple of holes and chews a couple of things up, or plays with your kids or plays with another dog, and then you want to wake up in the morning, put a long line out and walk around in circles and tell it to sit, it's just going to be like, what? Then training and cooperating with you becomes a low priority activity. So that's that whole thing of the way a dog prioritizes activities, and kenneling, and really refraining from that super highly stimulating stuff of a young dog just running around completely off leash with other dogs at the beach and stuff. It can really cause problems, and it can really set up that situation where you get stuck with a dog that's got bad habits and you've never been able to quite train it properly, and then that can cost them that freedom for the rest of their lives. Whereas, my dogs were raised with a lot of structure, a lot of kenneling. I did hold them back for that first 8 or 10 months, and now they're well trained and they've got good control and good attentiveness. So now they run around at the beach and at the park off leash every day. Because I had that restraint early on, freedom and responsibility. Not giving the dog too much freedom and responsibility before they're ready for it. It's hugely important. Yeah, that's basically it. She says, wondering what the cause might be. How should we handle the outbursts when they happen during training walks? Thanks for your time in advance. Much appreciated. Yeah, that's it really. Few of my notes here can be a sign of overtraining. Walking faster with less drills. Movement. Walking faster. If you're dawdling along, and if someone's dawdling along, looking at their phone, moving slow in the same area, and it's not enough for the dog, they get pissed off and frustrated. Walking faster, less drills, be engaged, give the dog more praise, focus on making it fun for the dog, while still keeping it within all the parameters of proper training. And these are my notes. So these are short bullet points on what I just talked about. When it does it, be very fast and sharp with disapproval, and then keep moving. Any type of stopping, pausing, engaging can make it worse. Don't praise too soon after the dog does the jumping and biting, because the praise might get linked to the jumping and biting. Don't turn your back on him and stay still while he does it. That's just sort of training suicide in this scenario. Don't ignore him and let him do it and then praise him, which is sort of doubling up there. But yeah, that's it, Julia. Quite a ramble on that. And I don't know how accurate a lot of that is to your exact case. I just sort of was doing a big talk on it, just trying to get, as much information associated with that situation out as I could. Let us know if any of that makes sense. Let us know how you're getting on. Keep us posted on it. Craig, 5.5-month-old Vizsla doesn't do automatic stops properly, does everything else really well, training is going great in general, sometimes goes 3 or 4 meters out of range when I stop. Once it realizes I have stopped, it stops. Is it a big issue? Nah, man, it's not a big issue at all. If everything else is going well and you've got a 5.5-month-old Vizsla that sometimes doesn't realize the instant you stop, and it takes a few more steps and then realizes and stops and looks back, 3 or 4 meters out of range isn't an issue at all. If everything else is going well, you're pretty gold, man. 5 months old, yeah, so you're on part 7, so you probably are starting some of those automatic stops in that, but in 7, 8 and 9, all of that stuff will be completely addressed and ironed out in the blueprint. I don't know if you've watched the head much into sort of at part 8 and 9, but it's well worth doing that. Part 10 too. Part 10 is sort of transitioning off the long line, smoothing all of that stuff out. But yeah, to me, it's definitely verging on the point of getting a bit fussy, stressing out about a 5.5-month-old dog going a couple of meters out of its range on the auto stops. I'd give it a little bit of leeway, watch ahead. It's all in the blueprint, and I'm sure, it's all that stuff's addressed later on. But again, let us know if it escalates or you get stuck. Sam, hi, I'm new here, not sure if it's been covered or not, but if I do scent training with a fallow skin, for example, would you expect the dog to track reds or sambar without actually having smelt one before? Cheers. Yeah, so that has been covered a few times, but not for ages. I know it's well back in the Q&A somewhere. And again, not an issue at all, man. It's good as gold if you have a bit of fallow skin to do your scent work with, but then you intend to hunt reds. You don't have to, train with each individual species of deer. If someone really wanted to target pigs, and deer, like pigs is one of their main things, or goats, or if, it's a big game indicating dog, you can use it to hunt any species of big game. I'd maybe, if someone really wanted to focus on pigs, I'd say, yeah, do a bit of scent work with pig skin just to solid that up a bit. Having said that too, though, as far as a deer goes, if you use fallow skin and then you do all the training properly and you start hunting your dogs in an area with only reds, it's going to hunt those reds good as gold. Particularly once you shoot one or two, it'll just be away. But 99 out of 100 dogs, particularly in those 8 or a dozen ideal breeds for a big game indicating dog, if you use fallow skin, they're going to hunt reds or sambar or rusa or whatever you want just as hard as they would a fallow. And remembering too, like, a big part of the scent work, like, dogs will hunt, as long as you can do a lot to stuff that up. And a big part of the blueprint is avoiding all the things that wind up with the dog being in a situation where it's hesitant to actually hunt. And it's surprisingly easy to do that too. But as long, the blueprint's all set up to not knock any hunting drive out of a dog, and it's all set up to enhance it as much as possible while keeping the dog calm and attentive and working for us. That's basically the whole thing. Even if we did everything that we do in the blueprint and didn't do the scent work, 99 out of 100 dogs would hunt well anyway. But doing the scent work, and the scent work is more about teaching the dog how to follow scent and what it means when instead of, the first time a dog smells something, like a deer 200 meters away or a bit of skin 200 meters away, sort of just like, I can smell something over there, and in a natural environment it would be able to head that way and it would work it out. The scent work that we do in the blueprint is more about guiding the dog through that and just setting that up so when the dog smells something 200 meters away, it knows, that's only over there, so if we go over there we'll find it. And it's how to track as well. We do all that tracking work. It's teaching the dog how to do it with us in mind, keeping its range, and that we're doing it as a team. It's all of that, and it is also setting it up it's just the extra step of doing it with deer skin, and it does help. It does help. The dogs that you do all that skin work with are up another massive notch. But I just sort of thought I'd talk about that because it's not as major as it helps a lot, and all the stuff we do in the blueprint is really important, but it's not as major as you might think. And a good dog that you don't muck up will hunt all that stuff like mad anyway on its own, even if it's never smelt one before. So that's it, everybody. Thanks for the questions. We've been knocking these out a little bit more regularly lately, which has been good. So throw your questions back up. Massive thanks to everyone that signed up to the blueprint lately, and we'll see you in the next one.